When I'm on social media and I come across a video that's going viral, say for example, it has 1.5 million views, right? Lots of views. My first thought isn't, wow, that's a lot of views. My first thought is typically, I really hope that this video properly demonstrates what the person who created this video wanted it to demonstrate, what they wanted their reputation to be about. Otherwise, they're in hell. And I say that in tongue in cheek, but the reason that I say that is because I learned this a while ago, and I want to share the story of how I learned this when I was working with a particular student who went viral and had to deal with this. And if you don't know who I am, my name is Joe Yulee. I'm a philosopher, and I help people to choose the right career path. And I was working with a student a few years ago, and we had just finished unearthing his career archetype. He was a visionary artist and had helped him to choose the right career path. And he was now building out the steps to get going. And one of the steps was to begin a YouTube channel. He wanted YouTube to be a big part of his career path going on into the future. And so we had talked a little bit about strategy, and he was on his way and he was getting ready to start moving and creating for YouTube, which he ended up doing. And it was only 4 videos in, right? So you can imagine, 100 views there, 250 views there, 10 views over here, and then one of his videos just popped and just goes. And it goes to, I think it was like 100K within 24 hours. And I had subscribed to his channel, so I saw this and I was like, damn, like this is fucking popping. That's amazing. And I can't wait to talk to him about it. And it was just a little while after where we ended up meeting and we're doing a catch-up call. And so we jumped on a one-on-one call. And I remember jumping on the call and being like, that last video, that's amazing. You've now started to bring in some people, seeing your work, and you can continue building this up. And as I'm saying this, I'm quite vibrant, I'm quite excited, getting ready to, build on this momentum. He's very quiet. He's reserved, and I can just tell that there's no excitement going on. And I remember just pulling back and just allowing the silence to sort of set in and give him some room to tell me what was going on. And I remember being like, what's happening here? Why aren't you, geared up? And he says to me that the video that had boosted, he knew in some way within himself before he posted it, it wasn't correct. And now what had happened is he'd created something that had gone off and had brought in a lot of subscribers, and now these subscribers were expecting certain things from him. And he didn't want to continue to create this type of work. And so what had ended up happening was he had created this viral video, he didn't want to be known for this, and now he had created a bit of a following for this type of work. And I could just start to see the dominoes begin to fall and the ripple effects go on, because now he had people watching saying, give me more of that. And it was like people were yelling encore and saying, go again, more, another one. And he was backstage with the manager fighting and saying like, fucking, I quit this shit. I'm out. I don't want to do it. I don't want to be known for this particular song they keep asking me to sing over and over and over again. And so he was left in this place of having to make a new sort of decision, which was, are you willing to go ahead and feed the crowd and lose yourself as you do this? Or alternatively, do you need to stop? Do you need to cut it off? Do you need to starve this so that it just eventually just goes away and never walk down that path again? And what happens most commonly is that people just start to feed the crowd. They start to lose themselves. And it takes them a very long time before they say, like, who am I? Where am I? This isn't what I wanted to do, and this isn't what I wanted to become. Now, thankfully for him, he had a sense of maturity, and I told him, stop doing this shit. You don't want to be known for it. Just cut it off now. And so he stopped, and he ended up figuring out how he wanted to proceed and got that sense of conviction within himself. And, so it's not a sob story. But in that moment, he had to make that decision. And because so many people end up feeding the crowd and losing themselves, it is a tough decision to make, because you've just suddenly got all this validation, but at the same time, hey, I'm not meant to keep walking down this path. And so the analogy that I typically make now is that social media is like a gust of wind. And if you don't have a direction and it hits your boat, you'll just end up on some random island. Now, maybe that island is correct, It's probably not. You're probably going to end up on some island that you didn't want to visit, that doesn't have any amenities, and then suddenly you're stranded with no electricity, no internet, and you're on some tragic island looking to feed yourself. We don't want you to be there. We don't want you to lose your sense of self. Instead, what you want to do is you want to understand the gusts of wind and only use them when they feel aligned with yourself. That's how you stay in integrity. If they're not aligned, you steer away or you stay away from anything that might throw you in the wrong direction. And so I wanted to sort of give you some sort of principles for this, because not only have many of my students gone viral, but I myself have many different videos that have over 500,000 views, where I do understand just how strong the force can be. And if you're not aware of your direction, you can quickly go the wrong way and end up in a position that you never wanted to be in anyway. And so the very first thing to remember, and I might sound a little bit like an existentialist here, but the crowd will devour you. The other will devour you. If you're not aware of your audience, your following, other people taking in what it is that you have to offer, what can happen is that you might start to serve them and start to lose yourself in the process. Now, this isn't their fault. What you need to do is you need to transcend it. You need to step out of it. You need to know who you are and lead it, as opposed to dissolving within it. Now, the other thing that I wanted to mention is that trends and topics can be like boosters. They'll just start to throw you in one direction really, really quickly. And if you don't know or know for sure that that is the correct direction, you might end up going the wrong direction really, really quickly. So you want to be very careful about trends or topics that have that virality. Otherwise, you can just end up, like I said, on some island that you never wanted to visit anyway. And finally, if you do accidentally go viral, which can happen, and that can happen a lot, particularly if you're creative. And the reason that it happens if you're creative is because creatives will start to move in directions that follow a particular scent, and they approach work with this like emergent property where things emerge and unfold, and they might stumble on virality. And sometimes this can be really good, and sometimes it can be the opposite. When it's the opposite, it's okay. All you need to do is just stop. You need to cut it off. You need to starve it off. And you just don't create in that way or express in that way again. You avoid it. You now know what not to do. You're wiser for it. And you don't want to fall into this pattern of, well, everybody's saying that I have to do this in order to go viral or to get things moving. Whenever I think about this, I think about Amy Winehouse, who was sort of forced and pushed and prodded to continually perform Back to Black just over and over and over again. And you can make the case that this is ultimately what killed her, the inability to nurture her soul, to nurture her inner creativity. And so you want to make sure that you're never in that position. And so my take when it comes to social media is that you want to understand its wind, you want to understand its power, but you also want to understand that it's not the leading force. It's not what directs you. You direct yourself. It helps you. And so in the words of Christopher Hitchens when he was talking about alcohol, I'll say the same thing about social media, which is simply that it's a good servant, horrible, shitty master.